Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. So this is actually going to be attempt number 2 to do a Facebook Live quick Bible study, and I'm actually hoping that this time the camera angle is proper, and I'm hoping that the audio has actually improved. So in front of me, what you're actually going to be seeing is the Nestle Allen Novum Testamentum Graece, the 28th edition. So this is the 28th Greek New Testament of the what we call a critical text. So most modern day translations are actually based on this version of the Greek text, like the NIV, NET, ESV, as you go along, NASB, YLT, all of the popular ones are based on this text. Now, today we'll actually be looking at a peculiar problem. I've been watching the posts of a Muslim apologist and debater from the UK in London, Brother Ijaz Ahmad. And he likes to post about contradictions in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Specifically, he focuses on the genealogical contradictions. One of the problems I wanted to look at today is actually a textual issue, a historical issue when it pertains to the New Testament. So as you know, in this New Testament, there is the Gospel according to Luke. And the Gospel according to Luke was allegedly written by an individual known as Luke. Now, who is Luke? Luke is what we call a scribe or an amanuensis on behalf of Paul. So the historical Paul is said to have dictated a letter to his scribe Luke. So what would Luke do? Paul would speak, and Luke, who is alleged to be a physician and a scribe, would listen to what Paul has said, write it down for him. So as you can see here, we have Pros Titon, or this is the epistle to Titus. It's one of the 3 pastoral epistles in the New Testament. This is probably the only one that's accurately attributed to Paul. Now, in this epistle, Paul is writing to Titus, in the Greek it's Titon, and he's given instructions to Titon on how to be a proper Christian bishop. What are the laws and regulations a bishop needs to obey? So this is Paul speaking a letter, and his scribe Luke is allegedly writing it down. So this is what Luke said. This is what Luke has written down. But avoid stupid controversies, genealogies, dissensions and quarrels about the law, for they are unprofitable and worthless. Now, the reason this is problematic, and we'll get into the variations in the Greek shortly, is that Luke wrote this down. He knew what Paul was commanding. Don't write anything about genealogies. Yet we find, and if I jump ahead here, you will see in Luke chapter 3, this individual Luke, who knows don't write down any genealogies, includes a genealogy in chapter 3 of his gospel, allegedly. Now, just to give some context here, the Gospel of Matthew was already in circulation by the time the Gospel of Luke was written. So if this individual Luke, learning from Paul himself, don't write down any genealogies because it causes confusion, why would he disobey Paul and write down this genealogy? That's a problem. It would either mean Luke did not write this gospel, or Luke was not his scribe or amanuensis, or it could be that Luke listened to Paul and chose to disobey Paul entirely. If that is the case, then that's a problem for Christians when it comes to apostolic authority and the reliability of the New Testament. Now, let's head back to Titus really quickly. And we're going to look at the textual issues with that text. Just find it here again quickly. So Titus chapter 3, and we're going to go to verse 9. Now I'm going to read verse 9 for you. Hopefully you can see it, and I hope you like my bookmark. Great story. Now shut up. I love this thing. Right? And I hope it's focusing on the Greek text here. Can you see it? Yeah, I think you can see it. So we're actually looking at verse 9, and I'm going to read to you the Greek that we just read the English translation from. So it actually says, Moras de zeteseis kai genealogias kai eleis kai marcas nomicas peristaso eisen gar ano pheleis kai mataioi. Now, what does this mean? This word here, moras, you probably know it in the English as moron as stupid or like foolish. So foolish, and here he says zetaseis, which means arguments, and he says here genealogies, genealogias. Now, if you can look closely up here, you'll see next to the word genealogies, you'll see a little symbol that looks like the English letter R. You can see it by my index finger here. Now, if we go down, and this is in a critical text, we're going to see why they have that R there. So we're looking at verse 9, and they actually say that with whoever wrote down this verse, they copied it from First Timothy chapter 6 verse 4, and they replaced it with this word here, logomachaios. So they took out the word genealogies because they realized it contradicted Luke writing down, don't write about genealogies, and then go into his gospel and include in a genealogy. And so which manuscripts replaced the word genealogies with logomachaios? Logomachaios means arguments about the word, or arguments about the scripture then, basically. Because if you remember the word makaios, we have it up here as well, and makas nomikas, and arguments about the law. So what is he replacing here? They replace genealogies, if you can see it up here, genealogies, right, where was it? I can't find it now, there we go, right here, genealogies, and they replace it with logomachaios. And this is from F and G. I believe this is Orgensis, and I can't remember the name for this one, it begins with a B. These two are from the 9th century CE. So by the 9th century CE, roughly 800 years after this letter was written, they've noticed that there was an issue, and they begin to replace the text in it. Now, if you look closely again, you will see, if I can show you pretty quickly here, let me go down here, the text for this verse is actually attested to by these manuscripts here. If you can see my right index finger moving. And if you see here, that's the letter Aleph, the Hebrew letter Aleph, that refers to Codex Sinaiticus. Now, see, this is not just speaking about Luke and his contradictions and the problems for the church. You have to also look at the textual history as well. So what this is telling us, this critical edition, it's telling us that verse 9 of this Titus chapter 3, verse 9, the evidence or the proof for this verse comes from a manuscript called Codex Sinaiticus, but the version that we're reading from is by corrector number 2. That's what that number 2 means on top there. So I'll give you a quick point of contrast. Here is also the letter Aleph, if the camera focuses, and you'll see there's an asterisk, or like a star next to it. So this is what happens. In the 3rd and 4th century, there are places called scriptorium. So a scriptorium is a place, as you might imagine, where manuscripts are copied. And so they're like a publishing house then. They sit down, they have one edition, and they copy it onto a next piece of paper, parchment or whatever. And they're different scribes. So one day one scribe might write down part of the document, he finishes. The other day another scribe would come, look over those writings, and try to verify them. Now for Codex Sinaiticus, this star means that the initial scribe, the very first person doing the copy, made a mistake and he corrected it. So it's a bit like you're writing down notes and you're in class and you make a mistake. Maybe you scratch off the note, the error that you made, and you continue. And so in the historical record, that's noted by a star. Now, as we're going back to this symbol here, again, Codex Sinaiticus, the 2, what this means is that there was the initial author, then there was a first corrector and a second corrector. So there have been 3 revisions to this text. So the earliest proof of Titus chapter 3 verse 9, as you read it here, actually comes from Codex Sinaiticus, but not from the 4th century. It's written by the third person to actually touch this text. So it could be in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th century, because as far as we know, Codex Sinaiticus, according to the latest research, has had changes going up and into the 11th and possibly 13th centuries. So I just wanted to show you a little bit of the Greek text and how we use it, how we study it, and how we come to the conclusions that we come to. We don't make up things on the spot. We don't assume things. We actually have scholastic literature that we use. We actually go to the core texts themselves. We look at the history. We look at the revisions. We look at which scribe did what, why, when, and how. And so it's not guesswork. It's actually taken the New Testament seriously. And many Christian apologists claim that Muslims don't do this. And here we are doing this. We're not afraid to open the Bible. We're not afraid to read it. And we're not afraid to look at the text and come to judgments from it. So in any case, today was just going to be a quick test of our live streaming setup to make sure it's working properly. Please leave your comments and feedback down below, and inshallah we'll have more of this to come soon. Assalamu alaikum, and I hope to hear good feedback inshallah.